Hi, and welcome to Mind Design, my weekly short video series where I offer stories or personal challenges in hopes that it will inspire you to embrace more of your own potential. I do this because as a coach, I'm constantly challenging my clients to step out of their comfort zone to do something that seems slightly out of reach or makes them uncomfortable. Because when we do that, when we push ourselves, that's where we end up growing. And so today I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience over the past week. A week ago tomorrow, I started just a video series with someone speaking on authenticity. And one of her questions last week was, she talked about how, our understanding of who we are is really so deeply rooted in our experiences as a child and what we were told or what the messaging was around who we could be, who we couldn't be, what were we supposed to be, what were we not supposed to be. And, those questions really kind of triggered me. And so I've been thinking a lot about my own, where am I still hung up in my life? Because this ride is never over. I'm never done growing. I'm always trying to do better because if I try to do better in my life, it makes me able to help my clients even more in their own lives. So authenticity for me um, kind of made me re-examine my own perfectionistic tendencies, because that's what my messaging was as a child, that I could be perfect, that's what needed to be done. There was other stuff too. And don't get me wrong, my parents did the best that they could with the tools that they had. We all do as parents. I'm not criticizing them, but that's the reality. The messaging for me was that my understanding was that I needed to be pretty awesome, that I got attention when when I excelled at what I was doing, when I was perfect, when my piano recital got me the first place ribbon. That kind of thing gets you lots of positive attention when maybe you're not getting any attention otherwise. And so, for years, I was the exact opposite of authentic. I wore a mask that suited whatever occasion presented itself. And no one knew. They thought I had the perfect life. The reality was I struggled with the feeling that I needed to be good. No, I needed to be great at everything I did. In my mind, I compared myself to everyone, and I had to at least look like things were amazing in my world. I parented like a boss. I had dinner parties. I excelled in business, volunteered at school, and generally had a life that looked really good on the outside. But what people didn't know was that I struggled on the inside. Like, the reality is, perfectionistic tendencies really can keep you stuck right where you are. I was obsessed with details. I was consumed by making good great or just better. And good wasn't good enough. And I would redo, rewrite, whatever needed to be done until I felt it was perfect. And the problem is nothing's ever perfect. When you're a perfectionist, it creates a tremendous amount of stress trying to achieve the unachievable. The need for excellence in the things that you do translates into self-criticism over perceived failures and everything taking much longer or putting things off because they aren't your best. And when you're a perfectionist, it's incredibly isolating because you're constantly hiding. Nobody knows who you are. There is no authenticity because you're doing so much to just try and hide that portion of yourself that isn't, we're so critical, isn't exactly as it should be. And there's a lot of negative self-talk involved with perfectionism. And we listen to that negative self-talk. So, I'm not going to go into a huge, long blurb about, where perfectionism comes from, because obviously we are conditioned, we're programmed from our early experiences, not to mention trauma. That's a whole other, avenue. And trauma can happen at any age. But we are definitely conditioned as we're little sponges, in those first 7 years. We're definitely conditioned or programmed to think of ourselves in a certain way in the world in which we exist. So what does it look like when you're actually struggling with perfectionism? You have regular feelings of failure. You're overly detail oriented. You struggle to relax and share your thoughts and feelings. And you procrastinate regularly, even to the point where you don't finish things or submit things or have an end date of something because it has to be constantly revised and redone. And you're controlling in your personal and professional relationships because that's how you make sure that you are safe. There's so much fear in perfectionism. You're very critical of other people, but that's a reflection of the criticism of yourself. And you're motivated by fear. You have unrealistic standards, probably not just for yourself, but for other people as well. And there's a deep sadness when you don't meet your goals, to the point of feeling, almost depressed over the perceived failures. So, and that develops into like a low self-esteem because you're constantly saying there's that negative self-talk, right? That I'm not doing the best that I could. Well, the best as a perfectionist, the best that you can do is never good enough. And it's very all or nothing, black and white thinking. Like it's yes or no. And there's a bit of an obsession with rules and lists, which I'm so guilty of. So guilty of. So, if you went down that list and said maybe one or two of those things are me, you might not be a perfectionist. But if you said check, 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 like I did, you're on my team. So what can you do, right? The reality is, this is not something that you're like, oh, I'm going to flip the switch and I'm not going to be a perfectionist anymore. These are conditioned behaviors. This is something, the belief system that you developed as a child on how you were supposed to be in this world. And your mind has spent years finding the evidence that that's actually what works. That's actually how you need to be to make things work for you in this world. But, at some point, you realize that that's no longer serving you, that that's actually an erroneous belief system, whatever you want to call it, that's keeping you really stuck, right? So for me, I'm trying to be as authentic as I possibly can be, because that's who I want to be in this life. If I'm a perfectionist, it's kind of the opposite, right? So I have to figure out the perfectionism, and I think it's still something that plagues me. I don't think that I'm past it, but I do think that you can create small steps, baby steps. I think you can create a way of, doing things differently and modifying your behavior in small little increments where you can change those patterns of behavior. So the first thing I want to offer you is, and I'm not a therapist. I don't go back to the beginning and try and provide what's needed for those formative days. But in understanding where that came from, it gives us a springboard forward, right? And so it's always about, where did that come from? Who gave me these messages? Who was telling me I needed to be a certain way? What was the messaging of my childhood? How was I supposed to be? How was I not supposed to be? When I hear the word perfectionism, who's the first person that comes to my mind? And if I don't do things perfectly as a child, what's going to happen? Is there a fear of punishment? Is that being a perfectionist gets you attention and otherwise there's some form of neglect in your life or perceived neglect? And now as a perfectionist, what does being a perfectionist give me? Control? Makes you feel safe? And what does it take away from me? What's it not allowing you to do? What freedom do you not have in your life because you're a perfectionist? And after you've kind of dug into that a little bit and really elevated your understanding, really reflected on what's going on for you, then I want you to take little tiny steps, right? And the first thing you need to do is do something imperfectly. The next time you're sitting down at the computer and you have to send that email, just type it out, reread it, send, push send, right? If there's a typo, if you forgot to add something, push send anyways, and allow yourself to sit in that moment where it's not perfect, where the draft of that letter wasn't perfectly formulated, where that the first chapter had spelling errors in it or whatever it is, and allow yourself to lower your standards and be okay with it, right? This is practice. This is good practice. Allow yourself to be okay with it. Start small, do little things, whatever it is for your comfort level. But remember, you've got to be a little uncomfortable, because the comfort it signifies these deeply rooted patterns of behavior, right? So you've got to be a little uncomfortable, but allow yourself to do something that's not perfect and be compassionate with yourself. When you know that, or when you're trying to beat yourself up, when you're like, I can't push, just push send and then go, it's okay. The world's not going to fall apart. It doesn't matter that much. And push for, progress. Even in undoing these patterns of perfectionism, we want it right now, right? We want to be not, what's the word, saddled with perfectionism. We want it to be over already. But what we need to be doing is pushing for progress. One step in front of the other, teeny tiny baby steps towards something that doesn't look like perfectionism anymore. So that's not what's tying our hands. So that's not something that we have to battle with as much, right? But it's little tiny steps towards progress, embracing that progress, being really compassionate with yourself, just trying to take small steps in that direction. We are imperfect. That's how we're supposed to be. The power never lies in attempting to reach perfection, but in actually accepting and embracing who you truly are, or who we truly are. That's why authenticity is so friggin' important to me at this point in my life. I just want to be exactly, after years of pretending and not being who I was meant to be, who I wanted to be, I just really, down to my roots, want to embrace this and live it and breathe it to the best of my ability. Wishing you so much love and light. I hope that you enjoyed this. And that's it for this week. I hope I've inspired you to do something differently in your life, to make small changes that create big impact. After all, you only have one life.